How does a writer know that their screenplay is ready for market?
It's a very good question. I think the first thing, it's just really essential that a writer submit it to colleagues for feedback. I mean, I am a professional in this field. A lot of times, even though I am not a writer, I write treatments. I work with writers on treatments and Bibles and so on. And at a certain point, I'll go through multiple drafts. I have a good built-in sense of editing. But at a certain point, you know, I might think, this is great. And then I'll send it to a trusted colleague, whether it's another executive at a production company or a writer whose opinion I respect. And they'll come back, and I don't know if they'll whip my ass, if I can say that, but they'll come back with feedback and go, you know, the treatment really isn't getting interesting until page 2. So I would cut out the first page and a half. And you know what? It's so, and it makes it better. And there are also, I think, are times where if it's someone whose opinion, you know, you need to really stay centered and on point. And something I definitely feel strongly about for writers is that, especially in the notes-taking process, because let's say a writer sets up a project with a production company, studio, or network, and they give notes. One of the worst things to do is to constantly be defending your position. And producers and executives will start to feel, you know what, life's too short, this person isn't receptive, they're not fun to work with, they're not getting it, they love everything they're doing. You know what, I'm not going to renew, or we're going to replace the writer. The best way for a writer to be able to take notes is to be totally open and receptive, and to try to hear, like, what, almost like with a second sense of what the executive is trying to say. So let's say they say, let me just think of an example, that I don't think a character should, you know, say this line, they sound kind of mean right here, and I don't feel, and then the writer, if you're listening rather than just defending it, you say, oh, that wasn't my intention. I meant that he was being defensive and a little bit sarcastic, but he was kind of trying to say it in a charming way. So then the executive would say, okay, I get it now, but that wasn't coming through. So then the writer can see that their intention wasn't coming across, so that they will go back and tweak it a bit. So again, I think it's very important to stay, like, you know, true to your voice, and not just like roll over if someone says, okay, well, we have an 85-year-old protagonist, and she has dementia, but I decided that I like everything else about the story, but let's turn her into a 13-year-old. Now, and believe it or not, I have heard of situations not too far removed from that. As a writer, I think you need to defend your position and why it was essential to the story that that character was 85 with dementia. That might not be the best example, but it's basically a balance between maintaining the integrity of your vision, because you can't just roll over for everything, because then you wind up with nothing and you compromise artistry and any kind of creative vision that you have. But anyway, in terms of a writer knowing when a project is ready, I think that I hear a lot of writers when I'm working with them, they'll say, well, there's always going to be improvements to be made. I think when you are working with people, whether it's a strong script consultant, development executive, friend who's maybe a writer whose opinion you respect, development executive, assistant to a producer, assistant to a writer, director, and so on, someone who's really experienced with reading material and knowing what studios want, that when it gets to a point where there's less and less notes and the collective feeling is, yeah, there might be some work that still needs to be done, because there always will be, but it's good enough. And for me, the bar of what's good enough is a character that's well developed, that's really coming through, even if they're maybe irascible or somewhat unlikable, that we still can have empathy for that character. If they're a villain, it's still good to have some empathy, not always as important. But for your protagonist, there's been a distinction between sympathy. What they might do doesn't have to be sympathetic, but you should have a degree of empathy for them. And I think it's really when the feedback comes back pretty consistently that this is good, and you're not just looking for validation. You have to be, really open.